March 23, 1943, just before dawn, outside Maknassy, Tunisia. The desert is still black, no moon, no wind, only the low growl of engines somewhere beyond the ridgeline. German sentries stand half asleep in their greatcoats, boots sinking into cold sand. The air smells like oil and dust and burned cordite from yesterday's skirmishes. A cigarette flares briefly in the dark. Then a shape moves. At first, they think it's another patrol. Then the ground starts to tremble. Not with the distant thunder of artillery, not with the slow rhythm of marching boots. This is different. This is steel. Tracks grinding against stone, engines revving hard, multiple columns moving fast, too fast. An officer raises his binoculars. The horizon flickers, muzzles flash, and suddenly the desert erupts. American tanks. Behind them. 3 days earlier, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel had been convinced he still had room to breathe. He stood inside a low command tent near Gabe's, boots planted in the sand, a map spread across a folding table. Tunisia was narrowing. The Allies were closing in from east and west, but Rommel, the desert fox, still believed he could slip through the jaws. He had done it before. In 1941, he had danced around the British across Libya. In 1942, he had smashed through at Gazala and raced to the gates of Egypt. His entire career had been built on movement, on speed, on striking where the enemy was. And now, in early 1943, he believed the Americans were still learning. They are green, he had told his staff weeks earlier. They have equipment but not experience. At Kasserine Pass in February, he had proven it. His Afrika Korps had torn through American positions, sending U.S. units retreating in chaos. Burning Shermans, abandoned guns, broken lines. To Rommel, it confirmed everything he thought he knew. The Americans were brave, but slow, cautious, predictable. And now, in March, with British forces pressing from the east and Montgomery rebuilding his strength after El Alamein, Rommel's only option was to withdraw north, consolidate, and prepare for the final defense of Tunisia. He needed time. He needed space. And he believed he still had both. What Rommel did not know was that somewhere west of the Atlas Mountains, a new American commander had taken control. General George S. Patton. Polished helmet, ivory-handled pistols, a voice that cut like a whip. After Kasserine, Eisenhower had replaced the shattered USII Corps leadership. Patton arrived with one mission: turn a beaten army into a killing machine. And he did it fast. Patton drilled his men relentlessly, forced discipline, forced movement, forced aggression. Units that once hesitated now attacked on schedule. Tanks that once waited for orders now advanced on instinct. And Patton had studied Rommel. He knew the desert fox lived on speed and maneuver. He knew Rommel always searched for the open flank, always trusted his instincts. So Patton decided to do something Rommel would never expect from the Americans. He moved faster. By March 20th, Patton's armored columns were rolling east from Gafsa. Sherman tanks, half-tracks, tank destroyers, long convoys of trucks hauling fuel and ammunition across broken desert tracks. No fanfare. No delay. Just momentum. Patton drove his men day and night. When engines broke down, they were dragged aside. When units fell behind, they were left behind. The pace was brutal. One officer wrote later, "We advanced as if the war would be over tomorrow." Ahead lay Maknassy, a key road junction Rommel needed for his retreat. Rommel believed Maknassy was secure. He was wrong. On March 22nd, German reconnaissance planes reported dust clouds on the western horizon. Rommel's staff dismissed it as routine movement. American patrols. Repositioning. Nothing more. That evening, Rommel dictated messages to Berlin. The situation was difficult but manageable. His formations would withdraw in stages. The line would bend, not break. But even as he spoke, Patton's spearheads were already cutting through the passes. They smashed into Italian rear guards, overran German supply depots, captured fuel dumps Rommel desperately needed. By nightfall, American armor was racing toward Maknassy from the west, directly into Rommel's escape route. The trap was closing, and Rommel still didn't see it. At 400 hours on March 23rd, German field telephones began ringing. One report, then another. Then another. American tanks in the rear. American infantry on the roads. American artillery zeroing in on German convoys. Rommel stepped into the command tent, pulling on his leather coat. His chief of staff spread new maps across the table. Red pencil lines marked the American advance. Rommel stared, silent. For several seconds, no one spoke. The Americans had not waited. They had not paused. They had not dug in. They had driven straight through, just like he would have. Outside, the sound of distant gunfire rolled across the desert. Rommel finally looked up. "The Americans have learned," he said quietly. Then more bitterly, "They have learned how to fight and how to move." In that moment, Rommel understood something that would haunt him for the rest of the campaign. The enemy he had once dismissed was now thinking like him. And worse, they were already behind him. German columns now raced north under constant air attack. Fuel was running out. Vehicles clogged narrow roads. Wrecked trucks burned along the route, black smoke rising like funeral pyres. Every hour lost meant another American unit cutting another road. Rommel no longer controlled the tempo. Patton did. And somewhere in the desert ahead, American tank commanders were scanning the horizon, engines idling, waiting for the order to strike again. The Desert Fox was running, and the Americans were hunting. But Rommel still believed he could slip away. He had escaped traps before. He just needed one more opening, one more road, one more night. He had no idea how close the jaws already were. March 24, 1943, midday, the road north of Maknassy. The sun hangs low and white over the desert, bleaching the color from everything it touches. Heat ripples across the road. The air vibrates with the sound of engines, hundreds of them echoing through the hills. German vehicles stream north in long, choking columns. Staff cars, half-tracks, fuel trucks, ambulances, horse-drawn wagons dragging artillery pieces through the dust. Panzer crews sit on turret decks, goggles pulled tight, faces gray with exhaustion. Infantry cling to the sides of trucks, rifles between their knees. This is not a fighting withdrawal. This is a flight. Every man on that road knows it. And every man knows what's behind them. Rommel rides in the back of a Horch command car, standing upright, one hand gripping the windscreen frame. His field cap is pulled low. His eyes scan the horizon constantly. Overhead, Allied fighter bombers circle like birds of prey. A scream splits the sky. A P-40 dives out of the sun. Rockets streak downward. A fuel truck erupts in a fireball. The shockwave knocks men off their feet. Flames lick across the road. Ammunition begins to cook off, cracking and popping. The column slams to a halt. Drivers leap from their cabs. Officers shout. Engineers scramble to push burning wrecks aside. Smoke blinds the road. And somewhere behind them, the Americans are still coming. Rommel had always believed that speed was protection. Now speed was all he had left. He ordered the column broken into smaller groups, moving on parallel tracks across the desert. No more neat convoys, no more predictable routes, just movement, constant movement. But Patton had anticipated that too. American reconnaissance aircraft tracked every dust cloud. Radio intercepts followed every transmission. Forward observers rode with tank columns, calling in artillery the moment German vehicles appeared. Patton had turned the desert into a net, and Rommel was driving straight into it. At a crossroads north of Maknassy, German military police try to reroute traffic. Signs are hammered into the sand, flags wave, whistles scream. Then American shells start landing. The first round hits the edge of the road. The second detonates in the middle of a truck convoy. The third punches straight through a staff car. Men scatter. Rommel's driver swerves hard, nearly rolling the car into a ditch. Shrapnel hammers the hood. A nearby half-track explodes, throwing bodies into the air. Rommel ducks instinctively, then straightens. He has been under fire since 1914. But this is different. This is not a battle line. This is pursuit. By afternoon, German units begin reporting American armor appearing ahead of them. Not behind. Ahead. Sherman tanks cresting ridges. Tank destroyers dug in at choke points. Roadblocks manned by infantry who seem to have arrived from nowhere. The Americans are no longer reacting. They are anticipating. Rommel's operations officer spreads new situation maps across the hood of a Kubelwagen. Red arrows stab across the terrain. Blue lines cut them off. Every route north is threatened. Every fallback position is compromised. Rommel studies the map. Then he folds it. There will be no organized front, he says, only escape. That evening, Rommel radios Army Group Afrika. His message is short, blunt. The enemy has broken through at Maknassy. American armored forces are operating deep in our rear. Withdrawal must be accelerated immediately. In Berlin, the message is received with disbelief. American armored forces. In the rear. Only weeks earlier, the Americans had been reeling at Kasserine. Now they were maneuvering like veterans. Somewhere in Italy, Albert Kesselring reads the report and shakes his head. The Americans are learning too fast, he mutters. As darkness falls, German columns move again. Headlights off. Engines muffled. Men ride in silence. You can almost feel the tension in the air. Every ridge line a possible ambush. Every bend in the road a potential kill zone. And then ahead, gunfire. Tracer rounds streak across the desert. Machine guns chatter. Flares burst overhead, bathing the sand in ghostly white light. American roadblock. Sherman's hull down behind a low ridge. Infantry dug in with bazookas. Artillery zeroed on the approach. The Germans deploy. Panzer grenadiers dismount. Mortars come up. An 88 gun is dragged into position by hand. The first German shell slams into the ridge. The Americans reply instantly. A Sherman fires. The 75 round punches through a half-track. Flames pour out. Another Sherman fires, then another. The road becomes a battlefield. Rommel watches from a distance, binoculars pressed to his eyes. His men fight with the discipline of veterans. They always have. But now they are fighting for space. For time. For survival. And the Americans are fighting to close the door. The firefight rages for nearly an hour. Finally, under cover of smoke, German units punch through the roadblock. They leave burning vehicles behind. Wounded men lie in the sand, calling for medics. There is no time to stop. The column moves again. But the message is clear. There are Americans everywhere. Near midnight, Rommel reaches a temporary command post in an olive grove. Maps are spread across crates. Radios crackle constantly. Reports come in faster than they can be written down. American armor near El Getter. American infantry near Esbatla. American artillery firing on withdrawal routes. American patrols probing the rear. Rommel listens, says nothing. Then finally, they are no longer amateurs. His staff knows what that means. The war in North Africa has changed. And Rommel, the master of maneuver, is now being maneuvered. Outside, the sound of engines fades into the night as another column escapes north. For now, but Patton's forces are still advancing, still cutting, still closing, and Rommel is running out of desert. By dawn, the desert fox will have one last chance to break free. If he fails, his army will be trapped against the sea. And this time, there will be no escape. March 25, 1943, 0540 hours, north of El Getter. The first light of dawn creeps over the hills, turning the desert from black to gray. The air is cold enough to see your breath. Engines cough awake in shallow wadis. Men stamp their feet, trying to shake the stiffness from their legs. Somewhere ahead, artillery fires. Not sporadically. Not probing. A full barrage. The sound rolls across the desert like thunder. Rommel stands beside his command car, binoculars pressed to his face. He watches smoke rise from the valley floor. His jaw tightens. The Americans are already in position. Again, El Getter had been marked on Rommel's maps as a possible escape corridor. A narrow gap between hills, a road that could carry his armor and supply columns north toward the coastal plain. If he could get through there, he might still stabilize the front. But when his forward units reached the approaches during the night, they found American infantry dug in. Not scattered patrols. A defensive belt. Mines. Tank traps. Interlocking machine gun fire. And behind them, American artillery waiting with pre-registered coordinates. Rommel had run straight into a wall. At 600 hours, German panzers begin to move. Panzer III and IV tanks roll forward in line, engines roaring, turrets scanning the ridges. Infantry follow on foot, hunched low, rifles at the ready. Then the first mine detonates. A Panzer IV lifts off the ground, flips, and crashes upside down in a cloud of fire and dust. American artillery opens up. Shells rain down on the advancing German formation. The ground explodes in fountains of sand. Shrapnel slices through armor skirts. Radios crackle with desperate calls for support. Rommel watches the attack through his binoculars. He can see his tanks burning. He can see his men pinned down. And he can see American Shermans moving into firing positions on the high ground. The escape corridor is a killing zone. Rommel lowers the binoculars. Slowly, deliberately. For the first time in months, there is no plan forming in his mind. No sudden flanking maneuver. No daring thrust. No weakness to exploit. The Americans have done exactly what he would have done. They have taken the ground. They have prepared it. And they are waiting. By mid-morning, the German assault has stalled. Wrecked panzers litter the valley. Smoke drifts across the battlefield. Medics crawl forward under fire, dragging wounded men back toward cover. The road north is blocked. Rommel calls his corps commanders on the radio. Their voices are strained. Ammunition is low. Fuel is critically low. Air cover is non-existent. And everywhere, American units keep appearing, as if they are multiplying in the desert. Patton has not only cut off Rommel's retreat, he has turned it into a trap. Rommel returns to his command post. A simple dugout reinforced with sandbags, a folding table, a map board, a radio. His staff waits for orders. They know his reputation. The man who once defied the British Empire with a handful of tanks. The general who made entire armies chase his shadow across North Africa. They are waiting for the desert fox to find another way out. Rommel removes his gloves, sets his binoculars on the table, and stares at the map. Red arrows, blue blocks, no open roads, no safe corridors, only pressure from every direction. An intelligence officer enters the dugout, dust coating his uniform. "Field Marshal," he says, "American armored elements have reached the road north of Maknassy. They are establishing blocking positions." Rommel nods. He already knows. Another officer adds, "Our rear security battalions report enemy patrols operating up to 20 kilometers behind our main line." Rommel closes his eyes for a moment. 20 kilometers. That means Patton's men are not just advancing. They are roaming freely inside what used to be German-controlled territory. Rommel opens his eyes and finally speaks. "The Americans are no longer reacting to us," he says. "They are shaping the battlefield." No one in the dugout moves. No one interrupts. Rommel straightens his map. Then quietly, "They are fighting like us." That afternoon, Rommel sends a message to Army Group Afrika. Not a situation report. Not a request for reinforcements. A warning. The enemy has mastered mobile warfare. Their armored forces are operating independently and with speed. Our withdrawal is under constant pressure. The Americans have achieved operational freedom. It is a remarkable admission from the man who wrote the book on desert warfare. By evening, Rommel's staff receives confirmation that British units under Montgomery are advancing from the east. The trap is now closing from both sides. Rommel's army is being squeezed into northern Tunisia, toward the sea. There will be no breakout. There will be no counterstroke. There will only be delay. And delay will not save them. As the sun sets, Rommel steps outside the command post. The sky burns red over the hills. Columns of smoke rise in the distance. The sound of artillery echoes like distant thunder. A staff officer approaches. "Field Marshal," he says carefully, "do you believe we can still escape?" Rommel looks at the horizon, then answers honestly, "No." The officer freezes. Rommel continues, "But we will make them pay for every kilometer." That night, German units begin pulling back again. Short jumps, rear guards, ambushes, every road contested, every ridge line defended. But now the Americans know how to fight this war. And they know how Rommel thinks. Patton has learned his lessons, and he is using them. Somewhere in the darkness, American tank crews check their engines, infantry load magazines, artillery crews wait by their guns. They know the Germans are coming. They are ready. The chase is over. The siege is about to begin. Rommel stands alone beside his command car. The desert fox. Out of desert. Out of options. And facing an enemy he no longer underestimates. March 26, 1943, late afternoon, northern Tunisia. A cold wind sweeps down from the hills, carrying the smell of burning fuel and cordite. The road is clogged with wreckage, twisted trucks, shattered half-tracks, abandoned guns pushed into ditches. German soldiers walk north in silence. No music. No marching cadence. Only boots on gravel and the distant thud of artillery. This is no longer a retreat. It is a reckoning. Rommel arrives at a forward command post carved into the side of a rocky slope. Sandbags line the entrance. A field radio hums inside. Maps cover the walls, pinned with bayonets. The officers inside snap to attention. Rommel waves them down. He is tired. Not physically, he has been tired for years. This is something deeper. This is the exhaustion of a man watching his war slip out of his hands. An adjutant hands him the latest reports. American armored battalions now operating near Matur. British units advancing from Mejaz el-Bab. German supply convoys intercepted and destroyed. Fuel stocks at critical levels. Rommel reads every line. Slowly, then folds the paper. "Where is General von Arnim?" he asks. "North of Tunis, Field Marshal." Rommel nods. The two German commanders now command what remains of Axis forces in Africa. 2 men, 2 armies, 1 shrinking pocket. Rommel steps to the map board. With a grease pencil, he traces the coastline. Bizerte, Tunis, the ports. Everything leads to the sea. Everything ends there. There is nowhere else to go. The realization settles in. Heavy, unavoidable. The campaign is lost. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. And everyone in the room knows it. A young staff officer breaks the silence. "Field Marshal, perhaps if we concentrate our armor here." He points to a narrow gap in the hills. Rommel looks at him. Not sharply, not angrily, with something like pity. "You are thinking like we still have time," Rommel says. The officer lowers his hand. Rommel turns back to the map. Then says the words his staff will remember for the rest of their lives. The Americans have finally learned how to fight and how to move. The room goes still. This is not propaganda. Not flattery. Not exaggeration. This is an admission. From the most feared battlefield commander of the desert. Rommel removes his field cap and wipes dust from his forehead. "For 2 years we taught the British how to fight in this terrain," he continues. "Now the Americans have learned in months." He taps the map where Patton's forces are advancing. They are aggressive. They do not wait. They do not hesitate. They push forward and let their artillery and aircraft do the rest. No one speaks. Rommel looks up. "They are no longer students," he says. "They are opponents." Outside, the sound of engines grows louder. A German armored battalion is moving into new defensive positions. Tanks grind past the command post, crews waving half-heartedly. Rommel watches them go. These men will fight. They always have. But fighting is no longer enough. That evening, Rommel dictates a message to Berlin. It is not optimistic. It is not defiant. It is honest. The enemy has achieved superiority in the air and on the ground. Their armored forces maneuver freely. Our ability to conduct mobile operations is severely limited. The situation in Tunisia is critical. The radio operator sends it. Rommel does not wait for a reply. He already knows what it will say. Hold. Delay. Fight. No retreat. No surrender. As always. Later, Rommel sits alone on an ammunition crate, eating cold rations. The desert stretches out before him, quiet now except for distant gunfire. You can almost feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. For the first time since he arrived in Africa, Rommel is not thinking about how to win. He is thinking about how to lose. With honor, with discipline, with his army intact. As much as possible. A staff car approaches. An officer steps out. "Field Marshal, we have intercepted American radio traffic." Rommel looks up. "What does it say?" The officer hesitates. "They are requesting additional fuel and ammunition. They intend to continue the pursuit through the night." Rommel exhales slowly. Of course they do. That is exactly what he would do. He stands, adjusts his coat, and looks north toward Tunis, toward the sea, toward the end. The war has come to us, he says quietly, and it is moving faster than we are. Behind him, his staff waits for orders. Ahead of him, Patton's army is still advancing. The Americans have not slowed. They have not paused. They have not stopped. And Rommel knows they will not. Not now. Not until the desert belongs to them. The desert fox turns back to his command post. There is still a battle to fight, and every kilometer will be contested. But the age of maneuver is over. Now comes the last stand. March 28, 1943. Dawn, the road to Tunis. The sky is a pale ribbon of light over the Mediterranean. The sea glimmers in the distance, calm and indifferent to the war tearing toward its shores. German troops dig in along ridgelines overlooking the coastal plain. They know this is the line. Behind them is Tunis. Behind Tunis is nothing. Only water. Rommel arrives just as the first American shells begin to fall. The ground shakes, dirt and rocks spray into the air, the crack of artillery rolls down the hills. American forward observers have perfect visibility from the high ground. Their guns are already dialed in. This is not probing fire. This is preparation. Rommel climbs the ridge and scans the horizon. Through his binoculars, he can see them. American armored columns moving in wide arcs across the plain, infantry advancing in bounding formations, self-propelled guns rolling into firing positions. They are methodical, coordinated, confident. Patton has not rushed them. He has unleashed them. Rommel's remaining panzers take up hull-down positions behind rocky outcrops. Anti-tank guns are dug into the slopes. Machine gun nests cover the approaches. This is how the Afrika Korps used to fight. Now it is how they survive. The first American tanks crest the far ridge. Sherman's silhouettes sharp against the morning sky. German gunners range them. Fire. An 88 gun roars. The shell punches through a Sherman's turret. Flames erupt. Another gun fires. A second Sherman stops dead, smoke pouring from its engine deck. The Americans halt. For a moment. Then their artillery answers. The ridge explodes. Shells rip through German positions. Guns are overturned. Ammunition dumps ignite. Men dive for cover. American aircraft roar overhead. P-38 Lightning streak low, rockets slamming into the slopes. The line trembles. But it holds. For hours the battle rages. The desert shakes with explosions. Smoke blankets the hills. Wounded men are dragged down into wadis. Medics work with blood-soaked hands. Runners sprint between positions as radios fail. Rommel moves constantly. From battery to battery. From bunker to bunker. Encouraging. Directing. Watching. This is his last battlefield. He knows it. By midday, the Americans begin to probe for weaknesses. Infantry advance through gullies. Tank destroyers maneuver to flank the 88s. Artillery creeps forward. The pressure never stops. Rommel receives report after report. Left flank holding. Center under heavy fire. Right flank losing ammunition. Fuel down to reserves. He absorbs it all. Then orders a limited withdrawal to secondary positions closer to Tunis. Not a retreat. A contraction. The pocket tightens. As German units pull back, Rommel watches the Americans advance. They do not charge. They do not rush. They move like professionals. Covered. Supported. Disciplined. Rommel cannot help but admire it. This is how wars are won. That evening, Rommel stands on a cliff overlooking the Mediterranean. The sea stretches to the horizon. Blue, endless, peaceful. Behind him, the sound of battle continues. He thinks of Libya, of Tobruk, of El Alamein, of the long road that led here. He thinks of the young American soldiers advancing toward his lines, men who, only months earlier, had been running at Kasserine. Now they are driving him into the sea. A staff officer approaches. Field Marshal, Berlin has replied. Rommel takes the message, reads it, closes his eyes, then hands it back. They order us to hold Tunisia at all costs, the officer says quietly. Rommel nods. Of course they do. He looks back toward the battlefield. Smoke drifts across the plain. American guns continue to fire. Patton's army is still moving. Always forward. Always closing. Rommel turns to his staff. We will hold, he says, as long as we can. They salute. They will fight. They will die. But they will not run. Not again. That night, German engineers lay more mines. Infantry dig deeper trenches. Artillery repositions for the next day. The last defensive line before Tunis is taking shape. And somewhere beyond the hills, American units refuel, rearm, and prepare to attack again at first light. Rommel stands alone on the ridge one last time. The desert fox, cornered, but unbroken. He knows how this ends, but he will not make it easy. The final battle for North Africa is about to begin. And when it ends, the desert will belong to the Americans. April 1st, 1943, before sunrise outside Tunis. A pale gray light spreads across the hills as artillery booms in the distance. The ground is scarred with shell craters. Burned-out vehicles litter the valleys like skeletons. German soldiers crouch in trenches, rifles ready, eyes fixed on the ridgeline. They know what's coming. They've heard the engines all night. Rommel stands at a forward observation post carved into the rock. His coat is dust-stained. His boots are caked with mud. He has not slept. Below him, the last defensive belt stretches across the approaches to Tunis. It is thin. It is exhausted. And it is all that remains between Patton's army and the sea. At 06:30, the American barrage begins. Hundreds of guns open fire at once. The hills vanish in smoke. Explosions roll across the line, trenches collapse, sandbags burst, men cling to the earth as the ground shakes beneath them. This is not a probing attack. This is annihilation. When the guns lift, the Americans advance. Infantry move first, spreading across the slopes in long lines. Tanks follow behind, turrets scanning, guns ready. Tank destroyers fan out to cover the flanks. The air fills with the sound of engines and shouting. The final assault has begun. German machine guns open fire. Tracers stitch across the hillside. American soldiers dive for cover. Mortars answer. Artillery slams back down. The battlefield becomes chaos. Smoke, dust, fire. Rommel watches through his binoculars. His men are fighting hard, but they are being crushed. An 88 gun fires point-blank into an advancing Sherman. The tank erupts. Another Sherman rolls forward and destroys the gun with a single round. German infantry charge with grenades and Panzerfausts. Some make it, some don't. The Americans keep coming. Always coming. By mid-morning, the German line is fractured. Units are isolated. Communications fail. Ammunition runs out. Rommel receives the reports. Reads them. Nods. There is nothing left to move. Nothing left to trade for time. At 11:20, Rommel receives an order from Berlin. He does not read it aloud. He folds it, puts it in his pocket, then turns to his chief of staff. "The campaign is over," he says quietly. Rommel steps outside the bunker. The Mediterranean glimmers beyond the hills. American tanks crest the ridgeline. The last kilometers of the Desert War are being fought below him. He removes his field cap. The wind cuts across his face. For a moment he closes his eyes, then opens them, and watches the end. That afternoon, German units begin surrendering in pockets across northern Tunisia. Some fight to the last round. Some throw down their weapons. Some simply sit in the dust, too tired to move. The Desert War is finished. Weeks later, over 250,000 Axis troops will march into captivity. An entire army gone. A continent lost. And the path to Europe opened. Rommel will not be there to see it. Soon after these battles, he will be recalled to Germany. Officially for health reasons. In truth, because the desert no longer belongs to him. Years later, men will ask what it felt like when the Desert Fox finally knew the game was over. When the master of maneuver was outmaneuvered. When the fastest army on earth found an enemy who had learned to move just as fast. Rommel never forgot the moment. The day he realized the Americans were no longer students. They were hunters. And